In this video, we will create the stored routines, more specifically the stored functions, that will let the trigger do its job. To save time, I've already written a class that returns the SQL statement to create the stored functions. So here in Mage2TV, brand example, setup, stored routines provider, there's a method getStoredFunctionsSQL that returns an array of statements. And these statements will create a bunch of functions in MySQL that can be then called within expressions just like built-in functions. So the functions that are created here are called UC first word, UC first word, UC for uppercase, right? And then but first word that returns everything but the first word of a sentence, and also UC words. So let's add this as a dependency to our schema patch. In our apply method, we'll iterate over each of those statements and execute it using the database adapter. Now, to access the database adapter, we need to add another dependency, the schema setup interface. Alright, very good. There is a problem here though. The query method on the database adapter prohibits executing SQL containing multiple statements. I assume for security reasons. Let's have a quick look at the implementation. Right here, the only implementation is the MySQL database adapter. And here it first removes any trailing semicolon and then checks if a semicolon is present, and if so, it throws an exception. So the problem here is that the statement that creates the UCWords function contains a body with multiple statements, so that would trigger that condition to throw an exception. To work around this, we have to use a deprecated method that exists only on the MySQL implementation of the database adapter. It's the multi-query method. So in our loop, let's check if the query that we want to execute contains a semicolon that isn't at the statement end, and if so, call multi-query instead of query. So we'll also trim off any semicolons or white space at the end of the query, and then check if the remaining string still contains a semicolon. So if this is true, so not equals false, then we want to call multi-query. So far, so good. Now the problem is that PHP Storm doesn't realize that we are using the MySQL implementation that exposes the multi-query method. So let's go ahead and wrap the loop in an if condition to check we are actually using the MySQL adapter. Okay. Let's extract this into a variable. Move this out of the loop. Wrap this in an if condition. In this one here. Okay, so now PHP Storm can see multi-query does exist, even though it is deprecated. But that's the best we can do right now. if a non-MySQL database would be used, well, we would have to write different stored routines anyway. By writing raw SQL stored routines here, we are coupling our module to MySQL as a database. On the other hand, currently Magento only supports MySQL as an RDBMS anyway, so for now I think we can simply ignore what to do on a different database backend. And this completes the preparations for defining the trigger. I warned you that the code wouldn't be nice. Anyway, in the next video we will create the actual trigger to make use of these functions.